Well, tonight it seems that Rachel Reeves isn't just Britain's Chancellor. She's a dodgy landlord who also decides what happens to your salary. And that, my friends, is terrifying. Let's get the take of political commentator Lee Harris now. Lee, good evening. Thank you for joining us. So, was it just a mistake? And if so, isn't that worse than something she did deliberately?
Well, it's just yet another scandal in a long line of scandals from a party, who, as you just pointed out, ran an election on being the party of competence and cleaning up politics. This isn't just a normal minister. This is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who has also, by the way, threatened tax hikes on family homes, imposed new laws on landlords. And she's, failed to follow the law herself by illegally renting out her house. Some might say this is a mistake. It's true, probably, to say this isn't the crime of the century. I think the licence is about 800 or 900 quid, something like that, to get it done. And apparently it isn't in every single area. So depending on where you live, depends on whether you actually get the licence. But, this does give an insight into her character. If she can't get the small things right, she's clearly not over the detail, but she can't get the small things right. How do we expect her to run one of the biggest economies in the world? But this also follows, let's not forget, I can't believe it's been so many things, but this also follows, Rayner resigning after avoiding paying stamp duty. I think it was literally only 24 hours ago. We've had Lucy Powell, who's on a list of other ministers, other Labour MPs who have been renting out their flats to other MPs, and the MP renting out has been claiming it back on expenses. I mean, considering what's happening in this country in a cost of living crisis, and I run a small business, we're being massively squeezed in the small business sector. To see all of this, living day to day like we all do, and then to see yet another scandal from the Labour Party, and we can go all the way back pretty much to their first week in office when we had the not the expenses scandal, we had the freebies scandal. It's just endless.
I mean, I do, in some way I feel, I'm waiting for the inbox to jump into life when I say this, but I do feel a bit sorry for her, because she said that she used, in her statement, she said, what did she say? Let me just bring you this statement. I'm trying to pull it up on screen now. She said that bear with me, she said, I wanted to make the Prime Minister aware of a matter which was brought to my attention regarding my family home. We let it out to tenants via an external lettings agency. Now, she would argue, and you might say, well, she's got a point, that really the agency should surely have told her if she needed to obtain this licence. She said, regrettably, we were not aware that a licence was necessary. It was an inadvertent mistake. Does that make it okay?
Not really. I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, again, I run a small business, and maybe you know about this as well, Bev, but if I try and use an excuse that I didn't declare some income for capital gains or something like that, they're not really going to care about me making that excuse as the normal person. If it's the same for me or people who run a business, or people who do pay their, or at least try to pay their taxes, it should be even more so the case for the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So no, I don't really have much sympathy for her not being over the detail on this, because the same exceptions wouldn't be made for normal people. As I understand it, the fine for this is around 30 grand. I hope she gets the whole 30 grand fine, which she will probably claim on expenses, or maybe take a severance payment if she gets sacked, like Angela Rayner did, which covered her missing tax. I think she had to pay.
Yeah. Well, the Prime Minister responded this evening, and he said the public rightly expects the highest standards of conduct from the politicians who serve them. The ministerial code sets out these values, and I have made it a core tenet of this government's mission to uphold them. I have this evening consulted with my independent advisor on ministerial standards, and he's advised me that further investigation is not necessary. The ministerial code makes clear that in certain circumstances, an apology is a sufficient resolution. I'm satisfied that this matter can be drawn to a close following your apology. I don't know. They seem very, very keen to start inquiries into things that would be sorted out in 2 seconds, and when it might sort of warrant a little bit of a deeper dive, he seems to go, "Yep, nothing to see here. Move on. Just say sorry. We're all okay with it."
I just try and imagine it, and it's really impossible not to do this if it was a Tory. Now, can you imagine the Labour front benches if this had been a Tory that had done this? You can say the same about, if it was a Tory that had failed to pay their stamp duty. They would be singing from the, crying from the rooftops about this all over social media. So again, it's very, very difficult to have sympathy for a party that, as I said, ran their entire election campaign on clearing up politics and being over the detail, a competent government, and the exact opposite is clearly true. And you could put this off again if there hadn't been so many scandals. If this was their first scandal, let's just say this was their first scandal. I don't think I would be raising too many eyebrows about it. I'm sure they would if the shoe was on the other foot. But this is, as I keep saying, this is a long line of scandals for the Labour Party, who is getting annihilated in the polls, and this certainly isn't going to help. Yeah.
Let's bring in Rebecca and Greg as well on this. Greg, you've seen there the statement that she made, and we've seen the Prime Minister's response. What do you make of it when you've seen both sides of that?
Yeah, I actually buy it. I think the letting agencies should have mentioned this, or at least ensured that she had the proper, either the proper permissions, or they should have attained the proper permissions. But I do think there's two things to conclude here. One is she and the entire government are incompetent, and two, there's too much regulation, there's too much red tape. This is a burden on the private sector. It's a burden on job producers. And now, so I don't dislike her for missing an administrative paperwork. I blame her for wrecking the economy with taxes and overregulation.
That's such a good point. I thought that myself actually this evening, Rebecca. When we're talking about whether this woman has not paid 900 quid, don't we neglect the fact that she's absolutely trashing the economy because she is a hardcore socialist?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a broader picture to point out here. The story, or they're kind of bearing the lead. It's not the fact that she, like Greg said, missed this administrative paperwork, which I'm actually kind of sympathetic to. As somebody who's trying every year to figure out how to file my taxes, and it's different every year. It's an uphill battle, and I don't really like thinking about it. But I'm totally sympathetic for that reason. Like, this isn't an easy system to navigate. But because of that, it kind of speaks to the incompetence of the government. Why is it so difficult to navigate? And then, in addition to that, why would she only get a slap in the wrist in that case? I mean, if I could just say, I'm sorry, and then all my debts were forgiven, that would be a really interesting incentive structure, as we were talking about earlier. And so, yeah, I do think that there is a larger problem here when it comes to the actual incompetence.
Do you know what else troubles me a little bit, Lee? Is Dulwich is not far from Westminster, so she's moved into the Chancellor's residence on Downing Street. We know that, don't we? She's moved into number 11.
Yeah.
There seems to be an element of greed for me, that she's rented out the family home. She's got 2 children that are at school in Dulwich. Her husband also, I believe, is a civil servant as well. It seems sort of rash. I don't know, who am I to judge somebody's living arrangements? But why would you move your husband and your kids out of school, presumably, into Downing Street to go to a different school? It's only down the road. Like, what does it tell us about her as a family as well? They've gone, oh, you know what, we've got 4 years, let's rent out the house. They can afford to keep both houses. Why is she getting the money on? I mean, imagine the hassle of having to empty all your house and your kids. I just think it's a bit strange all in all, Lee.
No, I agree with that, and it's part of me thinks, isn't it strange how becoming a Labour MP, or just an MP in general, maybe I shouldn't pick just on Labour, but does seem to increase your personal wealth quite considerably. Do I blame the MPs for being able to take advantage of a system that's clearly there to be taken advantage of? Part of me doesn't, but the other part of me thinks, and this is coming back to a little bit of what was just said a minute ago, I do think, yes, it's easy to sort of say, we can have sympathy for her for making a mistake. But I strongly believe that if you are a Minister of Government, the second most important person in our country should be over the detail and held to a higher standard. So yes, you can say that you have empathy for it, and I suppose on a human level maybe I do. But then my heart kicks in, my head kicks in, sorry, and I think to myself, well, no other normal member of the public would be given a break on this, and we would be expected to be doing the right thing, and one of those things is getting a license to rent out your house when you should be doing it properly. And I don't necessarily. I don't necessarily also think that it's all on the letting agent to be responsible for that.
Yeah, Greg, you know Scott Bessent, her American equivalent, well. Is this the kind of thing he would do? Is it the kind of ball that he would drop? Would he just have people that would just deal with this for him?
I think he'd have plenty of people dealing with this kind of stuff. And this is why, the tax accountant industry is so profitable, because you hire this out, and you almost have to hire it out. And Rebecca, it's only going to get more complicated the more money you make and the older you get. So look, of course, the Treasury Secretary, he probably had such scrutiny when you're approved for a cabinet position or really any government position in the executive branch. You go through a lot of scrutiny. I guarantee you they looked under every detail.
Yeah, it makes us look incredibly amateurish, doesn't it? That the Chancellor of the Exchequer can't even rent out her house without realising there was a 900 quid that she was meant to pay for a licence. It casts sort of everybody in this political picture in a very poor light. It tells you so much about our government, about the wraparound support even that we give to our MPs. And in her defence, like I would assume, Lee, that there are people that would help her with these sorts of things, but there's clearly not. What a shambles we are as a country.
Absolutely, you would genuinely think that's the first thing I thought about. Was surely there's someone that works for her that would be all over this. But yeah, the focus for me is the sheer kind of incompetence of her as a chancellor, and this is just yet another thing that, on its own, yes, probably doesn't look like, as I said, the crime of the century, but it just adds to this constant flow of information that we find out about this Labour Party that really doesn't fill the country full of confidence at all, or the markets, for that matter.
Yeah, quite. Equally as important. Lee, thank you so much. Lee Harris there, dropping in to join us here in Washington, D.C.